Was on carbohydrates. Their name stems from the fact that they're made from carbon and water in terms of the ratio of carbon to hydrogen to oxygen. So they are CH2O in terms of their chemical formula, even though they may be like C6H12O6, but that's the basic name. Their structure and function, so we'll look at some structures here in a minute. Functionally, carbohydrates are structural molecules. They can be involved in cell-cell interactions and communications, and energy storage and sort of usable energy in the form of glucose, so to speak. All right, so let's go ahead and have a look at these, and we'll answer some of these questions on this initial slide. All right, there are two forms of each sugar. So a sugar, or a monosaccharide, which we're looking at here, all right, if I just kind of highlight this for you. All right, this is the linear form of the sugar, but if you throw it in water, it will circularize and it'll look like this. And so this is ribose. All right, it's a 5-carbon sugar. Each of the carbons is labeled here, 1 through 5. Down here we have deoxyribose, and it's deoxyribose because it lacks an oxygen group right here. It just has a hydrogen. So you'll notice we have a hydroxyl group here in ribose and then deoxyribose. So RNA has ribose in it, and DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid, has deoxyribose. All right, so these are the most important 5-carbon sugars. Now, let's look at glucose. All right, so this is glucose here. Whoops, did the whole thing. I was hoping just to get this. All right, so here's our glucose. And what we want is to look at, it's a 6-carbon, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. All right, and the main thing I want you to get here is this carbon is the point, right? So right here where I'm going to make it kind of darker, there's a carbon on that corner, and this hydroxyl group is down, and that makes this alpha. All right, so it makes it alpha glucose. If it was up here, all right, so if that hydroxyl group was up here where I'm kind of trying to highlight at the moment, all right, if it was up here, then it would be beta, right? And beta glucose is found in structural molecules, alpha glucose in energy storage molecules. All right, so alpha, as we see here in this diagram, is energy-based. Beta is found in structural, right? So now, some other sugars and some things I want you to get. So here we have mannose on the right, galactose down below, and the basic idea of showing you these is these are all very similar. All three of these are extremely similar. And what you'll notice is it's the hydroxyl groups down, up, up, down for mannose, down, down, up, up for galactose, and down, down, up, down for glucose. Our taste buds can actually differentiate the sweetness of glucose, mannose, and galactose, which is just that where those hydroxyl groups are found, which is interesting. So galactose would be milk sugar. Now fructose, right, we use as a sweetener, all right, and it is a 6-carbon sugar, but you'll see its ring is a little different. So we have a little variation here. As far as what you need to know, just know glucose. I mean, know that there are very similar sugars out there, but really it's glucose, alpha, and beta forms. All right, so how do we make a disaccharide or a polysaccharide, right? So if a monosaccharide is an individual sugar, right, or a simple sugar, a disaccharide then is 2 of those linked together, and we link them together by dehydration synthesis, again, right? So we talked about this in basic chemistry. And I mentioned that functional groups were important in how these molecules interact and bond and so on. So let's look at this. So glucose has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 oxygens, all right? Those carbon-oxygen, oxygen-hydrogen bonds, so here we've got right? An oxygen-hydrogen bond, and then this oxygen is linked to a carbon, as they all are, right? So each of these corners here is a carbon that we can't see. And what I want you to get from this is that we have lots of polar bonds, polar covalent bonds. Therefore, glucose dissolves easily in water, right? No problem at all. Now, the other thing about functional groups I told you is that they form the bonds, right? They allow the molecules to interact. And so what's going to happen here is two hydroxyl groups interact. Water is going to leave, and we get what is called a glycosidic bond, which is right here, or a linkage, all right? And so let's go ahead and write that out. So glycosidic bond, and in this case, the bond is between the 1 and 4 carbons. So it's a 1, 4 glycosidic bond, all right? We can even take that a step further. Remember when I was talking about alpha and beta? So this is alpha glucose because it's down, and so it is a alpha 1,4 glycosidic bond, right? So there's an awful lot going on there, but that is the basic idea, okay? So glycosidic bond, 1,4 glycosidic bond refers to the carbons between the two different monosaccharides, and then alpha tells us that it is a energy storage bond. So what basically all that means is we can break this bond apart really easily and get to glucose and sucrose, or fructose, sorry, and use this sugar as an energy source, all right? Okay, so let's look at the main polysaccharides, all right? And so I'm going to make another little note here. And so let's get polysaccharide up here, all right? And I don't know if there are two C's. I am not the world's best speller. There are. Anyway, so we've got polysaccharide, and we want to look at the differences. So at the top here we have cellulose. Cellulose is made from, all right, cellulose is made from beta glucose. So that hydroxyl group at the 1 position is up, causing a form or the orientation of the bond is to be drawn in this manner. So it's still a 1,4 glycosidic bond, but it is a beta 1,4 bond. Now let's look at glycogen. Okay, so glycogen is the form that we store glucose in our muscle cells in glycogen, and it is made up of alpha glucose. Okay, so here, right, the carbon 1, the hydroxyl group was down, and therefore we get a different orientation of the bond. All right, so what this really means is that cellulose is like paper. Maybe you're taking notes right now, right? So I got some paper here, I'll crinkle it. But the basic idea with that is that you can't, if you eat that paper, you won't get nothing out of it, right? You can build a house out of wood, you can make things out of wood, it's strong, it's difficult to break down. It's a structural molecule. So we find this in plant cell walls, for example. We're going to find something similar in the walls of our bacteria. Now, glycogen and dextran, which is basically starch down here at the bottom, I'll show you in a second, they are alpha bonded. So that is alpha glucose to make it. And so glycogen, if you were going to go, say, run, 6 miles or something, your body would start to mobilize glycogen as glucose, transform the energy in the glucose into bonds in ATP, and you can use that to make your muscles contract and so on. So glycogen then is an energy storage molecule because it's alpha linked. Now dextran down here at the bottom, the only real difference here is that it also contains, so not only is it alpha 1,4 glucose linked, it has branch points called alpha 1,6 glycosidic bonds. And so here, right, we get a lot of alpha 1,6 bonds that cause these branch points, all right? And so dextran is like starch. We find this in potatoes. It's a good energy storage molecule in plants. And it is very effective in that manner. So we find dextran or starch there, and it's just highly branched, okay? You can also see that we have some branch points in our glycogen as well, okay? All right, so cellulose, beta glucose, structural molecule. The orientation of this linkage, right, means it's hard to do hydrolysis reactions and break it apart. Therefore, it's a good structural molecule. Glycogen alpha linkage here, alpha glycosidic bond, easy to hydrolyze, so hydrolysis occurs easily, and therefore we can store glucose in glycogen, and we can readily mobilize it. Same is true for dextran. So that's carbohydrates. All right, and next you should move on to any of the other biomolecules that you haven't yet covered.